My wife had been secretly altering my will, but what happened after I discovered it was something she could never have anticipated. I'm a 58-year-old man who's built everything I have through sheer hard work and determination. Growing up with very little, I swore to myself that my children would never face the struggles I endured. Over the years, I created a stable, comfortable life for my family, and while I took pride in my achievements, I began to see how my generosity had unintentionally fostered a sense of entitlement, especially in my youngest daughter, Judy. Judy was clearly her mother's favorite. She had a knack for getting whatever she wanted, whether it was through charm, tears, or outright manipulation. I'd always tried to instill a sense of responsibility in her, holding firm boundaries, but my wife constantly undermined my efforts. She's just a child, she'd argue, even though Judy was well into her 20s and still entirely dependent on us for everything. I didn't give it much thought, until one evening when I stumbled upon something that shook me to my core. I walked into my study and noticed my wife's laptop left open on the desk. That in itself wasn't unusual, but what caught my attention was a file titled Revised Will. My stomach churned. I hadn't discussed making any changes to my will, so I let curiosity get the better of me and opened the file. What I saw made my blood boil. The document outlined significant changes to my will, reallocating the majority of my estate, including my business and savings, to Judy. Meanwhile, my other children, who had worked hard to build their own lives, were left with symbolic, almost insulting amounts. At the very bottom of the document was something that made my heart race. My signature, forged in an attempt to make the changes seem legitimate. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife had not only rewritten my will without my knowledge, but she had also gone as far as to falsify my signature. I'd always known she favored Judy, but this was a betrayal far beyond anything I could have imagined. That night, I confronted her. As she walked into the living room, I held up a printed copy of the document. "Can you explain this?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. Her face went pale. "Where did you find that?" she stammered. "On your laptop," I replied coldly. "What were you thinking? Did you really believe I wouldn't notice?" She tried to collect herself, offering a weak excuse. "It's not what it looks like. I was just brainstorming some ideas. I thought we could talk about it." "Talk about it?" I repeated, incredulous. "You forged my signature and rewrote my will behind my back. This isn't a discussion. It's a betrayal." Her unease gave way to defensiveness. "Judy deserves more than the others. They're already doing well on their own. But she needs help. She needs to grow up." I snapped. "I've had enough of coddling her. And the fact that you went behind my back to do this, it's unacceptable." Her expression hardened. "You've always been so hard on her. She's your daughter. She deserves a chance at a better future, a future built on deceit and entitlement." I shot back. "This isn't about helping her. It's about enabling her. And you've crossed a line." Instead of apologizing, she doubled down. "If you won't help her, I will. Someone has to look out for her." Her words cut deep, but they also revealed the extent to which she was willing to go for Judy's sake. This wasn't just favoritism, it was outright manipulation. That night, I made a decision. I secured my will and all other important documents in a safe, changing the combination so no one else could access them. The next morning, I reached out to my lawyer to explain what I'd found. His reaction confirmed my worst fears. "What she's done is not just unethical. It's illegal," he told me. "If that document had been filed, it could have sparked years of legal battles for your other children. We need to act immediately." On his advice, I froze all joint accounts my wife might have access to and began drafting a new will with stricter protections in place. The following days were tense. I didn't tell my wife about the steps I was taking, but she seemed to sense a shift. She grew more distant and defensive, constantly checking in on what I was doing. I also noticed her behavior changing in subtle but suspicious ways. She started spending more time with Judy, whispering behind closed doors and making phone calls she didn't want me to overhear. One evening, I decided to follow her. She left the house claiming she was meeting a friend, but instead, she drove to Judy's apartment. I parked at a distance and waited. After about an hour, she came out carrying a stack of papers. Though I couldn't see what they were, I had a sinking feeling they were connected to the will. The next morning, I confronted her once again. "What were you doing at Judy's last night?" I asked. She looked startled but quickly covered it with indignation. "I don't have to explain myself to you. You do when it involves my estate," I replied firmly. "Enough of the lies. If you don't come clean, I'll be forced to take legal action." That threat shattered her composure. "You're being ridiculous," she snapped. "Everything I've done has been for the good of the family." "No," I responded sharply. "Everything you've done has been for Judy, and in the process, you've destroyed my trust." Her entitlement was staggering. She genuinely believed she was justified in altering my will and manipulating me. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. That confrontation marked a turning point for me. I could no longer ignore the lengths she was willing to go, not only to favor Judy but to undermine everything I had worked so hard to build. It was time to take decisive action. The first step I took was hiring a forensic document expert to verify the forged will. My lawyer had advised me that solid evidence of the forgery would be crucial if my wife decided to challenge the legal actions I was preparing to take. Sure enough, the expert confirmed that my signature had been falsified. Armed with this proof, I filed for a legal injunction to prevent any further tampering with my estate. Meanwhile, I realized it was time to be honest with my other children. They deserved to know what was happening. One Sunday morning, over coffee, I laid everything out for them. "This isn't just about the will," I told them. "Your mother has been manipulating me, and I refuse to tolerate it any longer. I've already taken steps to ensure this doesn't affect you." They were shocked, but they stood by me. My eldest, who had always been the most practical, said, "Dad, you're doing the right thing. If she's capable of this, who knows what else she might try." Their support gave me the strength to move forward. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to protect not just my assets but my integrity. A week later, my lawyer called with updates. The new will was finalized, and all accounts that my wife or Judy might have accessed were officially frozen. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief, knowing my hard-earned legacy was secure. But I wasn't finished yet. I confronted my wife one last time. "I know everything," I said calmly, placing the forensic report and legal documents in front of her. Her face turned pale, but she quickly tried to feign innocence. "You're overreacting," she said. "I never intended to file that will. It was just an idea." "Save it," I said coldly. "You forged my signature and attempted to rewrite my legacy without my consent. That's fraud, and I have the proof." She tried to shift the blame. "Judy pushed me to do it. She's the one who needs help. I was only trying to support her." "Enough," I interrupted. "You're responsible for your own actions, and I refuse to let you drag me down with your lies." The next day, I filed for separation and served her with legal papers to begin the divorce process. She was furious, but her anger didn't faze me. Her betrayal had completely destroyed any trust or respect I once had for her. The fallout from my decision was immediate. My wife moved out of the house and went to stay with Judy, which wasn't surprising. What did catch me off guard was how quickly Judy involved herself. She began contacting family members, spreading falsehoods about me, claiming that I had abandoned the family and was trying to rob her of her rightful inheritance. Her smear campaign didn't gain traction for long, though. I had already consulted my lawyer about releasing key evidence to close family members if necessary. When the truth about the forged will and my wife's actions came to light, the tide turned against them. Judy and my wife refused to back down, clinging to their entitlement and even threatening to take me to court for unfair treatment. I welcomed the challenge. "They don't have a legal leg to stand on," my lawyer assured me. "If they try to pursue this, they'll only humiliate themselves further." Sure enough, when my wife's attorney attempted to file a petition challenging the distribution of assets, the court dismissed it outright. The forged will, combined with the evidence of their deceit, was undeniable. Their attempt to manipulate the system had backfired spectacularly. With their actions exposed, the dominoes began to fall. Friends and extended family who had initially sympathized with them quickly distanced themselves. Even Judy's social circle seemed to shrink as people recognized the extent of her entitlement. One evening, my eldest daughter reached out to me. "Dad, I know this has been tough, but you've handled it better than I ever could. We're proud of you for standing your ground." Her words meant the world to me. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of closure. I had fought not just to protect my assets, but to defend the principles I believed in, and it had been worth it. In the end, my wife's betrayal led only to her downfall. The divorce was finalized within a few months, and I retained full ownership of my estate. Judy, meanwhile, was left scrambling for financial support elsewhere. I later heard that she had tried to manipulate a distant relative into helping her but was met with rejection. Looking back, I realized I had allowed my wife and Judy to exploit my kindness for far too long. Cutting ties with them wasn't just about safeguarding my assets. It was about reclaiming my life and peace of mind. If this experience has taught me anything, it's that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's absolutely necessary.